Welcome. If you're a woman who has a sense that there's more out there for you, you're in the right place. I'm Whitney Baker, host of the Electric Ideas podcast. Somewhere along the line of work and kids, life carried on, but I lost track of my truth. I'm on a reflective journey, and that's what this podcast is all about. Each week, I interview a woman who is lighting her own path and offering others hope. Before our conversation ends, we'll share a reflective question for you to explore. Sometimes all we need is a jolt, a fresh idea, an aha moment that connects us to a sense of possibility. This, my friends, is what I call an electric idea. Welcome back to the Electric Ideas podcast. I am so glad you're here. I know the beginning of the year is a time when many of you are taking stock of your habits and your practices and hopefully making intentional decisions about how you want to show up and how you want to feel and how you want to express yourself in 2025. Maybe you're even thinking about who you get to be in this world in 2025 in order to call your visions forward. But in case it helps, I want you to know that I am not someone who rolled into January 1st, locked and loaded with a shiny set of new goals. Don't get me wrong, I love the fresh start feeling of a new year, and I do try my best to live an examined life. But December is always a super full month, and it takes a while in January for me just to regroup and get back to my equilibrium. So this year, I decided I would give myself the entire month, if I need it, to take stock, to feel into what I need to shed and what I want to call forth this year. For those of you like me who live in the Northern Hemisphere and it's cold and dark in the winter, one thing that helps me surrender to and enjoy winter is looking at it as a beautiful time where we can choose to slow down a bit. If we're willing to embrace some of this stillness, it's a great time to give yourself a little extra space for care and reflection. But I encourage you to let this work and the soulful practices I'm going to be sharing with you today to feel comforting and expansive instead of feeling like you're behind or that you're supposed to be reinventing yourself overnight. Tending to your soul is a journey that lasts your entire life. So taking it one day at a time is totally fine. Right now, I'm in a phase in my life where I am much more curious about what I need to cease from doing or release versus what I need to add. I'm really pulled to release any thoughts, habits, physical things that aren't serving me, anything that's obscuring my lightness, my joy, my ability to feel good, and ultimately my capacity to positively impact the lives of others. So a lot of my January New Year reflection so far this year has been thinking about what it truly would take for me to show up as a person who is energized and full of light. I'm thinking about and asking myself, what would it look like to care for myself so deeply that I regularly have the capacity to share my gifts from a place of joy and overflow? I am all about taking good care of ourselves as women, but it's not just because we are worthy of feeling good. It's also because we are honoring ourselves and equipping ourselves to contribute more positively in the world and in other people's lives. Before I share these 5 practices for tending to your soul, I also just want to acknowledge the messiness of life. And even when you are trying and being mindful, not every day is peachy. I've had sick kids home both of the past 2 weeks, our first 2 weeks after winter break, when we're supposed to be getting back into a normalish rhythm. For the modern woman who wants to feel good and do good, but routine disruptions are part of your life, I see you. I am one of you. I find solace in Alan Watts's idea around the wisdom of insecurity. It's this whole idea that a spiritual life is not about being tied to a sense of certainty or control. Because if you're an adult, hopefully you've learned by now, control and certainty are kind of a big illusion. Instead, us seekers are working to embrace the impermanence and unpredictability of life. So embracing the impermanence and unpredictability of life is half of the practice when we are actively attuning to ourselves. But what I've found through decades of learning and trial and error is that when I am in a space where I am regularly tuning into myself and taking care of myself at a soul level, that when these bumps in the roads hit, which they will, they're less likely to completely derail me. So how do we cultivate this? How do we tend to our soul? We've all heard talk of mind, body, soul, but many people don't actively try to buoy their souls. And it's something I've been deeply curious about for many years. Many of us have practices to nurture our bodies. Hopefully, you're getting something green in your system, you're drinking your water, and you're moving in a way that feels good. And I love that there is a lot more attention to tending to our minds these days. Mental health awareness is so important, and I'm glad it's on the rise. But what does it look like to you in this modern age to tend to your soul, the sacred part of us that craves attention and connection? And just to be clear, I am all for anything that brings comfort and meaning to your life. But when I talk about soul, I am not referring to any specific religious interpretations. I like how Thomas More puts it. He says the soul is not a thing, but a quality or a dimension of experiencing life and ourselves. It is related to depth, value, relatedness, heart, and personal substance. So my invitation for you today is, instead of worrying about your entire life plan this January and putting tons of unnecessary pressure on yourself, what if you let it be enough to simply practice connecting with your soul and meeting yourself where you're at right at this moment? I'm going to share 5 practices that help me live a more soul-guided life, but I also wanted to let you know that I've created a free toolkit for you that I just made available this week called Tend to Your Soul Toolkit, and it gives you some structure around these practices. So if anything I talk about in this episode resonates with you and you want some inspiration for activating these practices in your own life, be sure to check out my show notes for a link to the toolkit. And if you have any issues finding it, you can always message me on Instagram. I'm hanging out there at @WhitneyWoman, and I will gladly send you a link to this free toolkit. Okay, so let's dive in. The first soul care habit that could seriously change your life is exploring a meditation practice. This should not come as a shocker. I'm a certified meditation teacher, and it's a practice that's transformed my life in so many positive ways and anchors a lot of my work with clients. I feel that it's important to share here that I am sometimes a loud, creative type who has a huge ability to create massive messes in the kitchen or have a gazillion books and papers on my desk. And the reason I'm telling you this is because some of the top reasons that people don't meditate are: 1, they think it's for a certain type of person. 2, they think they're doing it wrong or they just don't even know where to start. 3, they say they don't have the time. I'm here to tell you that meditation can be for everyone and every type of person. We live in a world that is bombarding us around the clock with information. We are so plugged in online that many of us are completely disconnected from ourselves, from our intuition, from our sense of connecting to something greater than us. For the caregivers in my community, meditation is such a gift to yourself. There will always be more to do. You have to put a stake in the ground and decide you are worthy of space to pause and reset, even in a world or a household that constantly demands your attention. If you chose to listen to this episode of the podcast, I'm guessing you're someone who is at least a little bit spiritually curious. I've officially stepped out of the spirituality closet because I have so much to share from this space, because it's truly helped me navigate the messiness of life. And I want this for you too. But for those of you who feel a little squirmy for whatever reason about this, I will remind you that there is a ton of research out there on the science of meditation, including on how it increases activity in the areas of the brain associated with positive emotions and emotional regulation. I also think chronic stress is one of the silent killers of our generation, and meditation can be part of the solution to help us mitigate stress and have resilience in the face of life's many uncertainties. If you haven't meditated and don't know where to start, I've got you. I have a free 5-minute guided meditation waiting for you in the toolkit. I also want to share that I feel so passionate about this practice and giving women a chance to truly tend to their souls and connect with themselves, that I've created a 5-day mini course that will be released next week. And it is going to be at a price point that is meant to be a complete no-brainer. I want more women to experience the benefits of meditation, and it's a practice that simply needs to be felt and repeated versus intellectualized. So more to come there. Moving on to practice number 2 for tending to your soul, which is try a personal writing process. You have so many answers, clarity, and wisdom inside of you, but you have to give yourself space to listen. A lot of people think of a journal as a place to capture thoughts and write about how their day went. You can use your journal however you want, but I'm calling for you to try using a journal as a tool for self-connection and self-discovery. Do you want to know what would make you feel joyful and like you're getting it right in this one precious life? Guess who can tell you? You! So personal writing or intuitive writing is a tool I use a lot with my clients because there's something super magical that happens when we give ourselves space to actually tune into ourselves and answer questions. It always helps with clarity, even though sometimes we get answers, we have truths that surface that aren't totally convenient. Writing something with your hand and seeing and reading back your own words can feel like you have a mini life coach with you at all times. Because you basically do, and it's you, and it's your own soul wisdom. You just have to make space to listen to yourself. There are countless ways to journal and thousands of prompts to explore, but I want to make it simple for you. So in the free Tend to Your Soul toolkit that I've created with you in mind, you'll find 5 thoughtful self-reflection prompts to get you started. I also put a link in there to one of my favorite Electric Ideas podcast conversations featuring a woman who is truly a pioneer in the personal writing space. My goal in creating this toolkit for you is to give you an easy starting point. No searching or planning required. Through my own journey, I've come to see the art of receiving as a beautiful and transformative practice for women. That's why I'm offering you a ready-made structure you can lean into without having to create it for yourself. It's a free gift from me to you, and all you have to do is click and receive. Okay, let's move on to habit number 3 for tending to your soul. Habit number 3 is get into nature. There is a reason why so many poets have been inspired by nature. If you're feeling stagnant or if you're feeling irritable, it's incredible what a simple walk in any kind of nature can do. And speaking as a city dweller, I know firsthand that nature doesn't have to mean grand landscapes. It can be as simple as a 5-minute walk in the park. I love forests and oceans and lakes and mountains, but those aren't always accessible. So I make it a point to seek out small doses of nature. Ralph Waldo Emerson famously said, "Adopt the pace of nature. Her secret is patience." And lately, I've been deeply aware of life's cycles and seasons. Just last month, my daughter officially became a teenager. It's crazy. This morning, I caught myself just sitting in the kitchen staring at her, kind of in awe, thinking, how are you so grown, so big? I'm having lots of these moments that are reminding me of how fleeting time is and how important it is to pause and be, something that nature always gets right. I love the Lao Tzu quote, "Nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished." So while I am all for dreaming big and creating visions for my life, it's easy to get caught up in the striving and forget about the living. When I spend time in nature, it definitely pulls me back into the aliveness of the present moment. It reminds me that usually when I feel like I'm living my best life, it has nothing to do with big achievements and more to do with my ability to appreciate and savor small, everyday type stuff. Before I started Electric Ideas, I was stuck in what I like to call my murky middle phase. I had closed the door on a glossy but rather unfulfilling career. I was parenting 2 very young children who were only 14 months apart. I felt like I had a lot of talent on the table, and it was almost like I was waiting for somebody to tap me, where in reality, what I really needed to do is learn how to tap back into myself. I put so much unnecessary pressure on myself to figure out my life purpose. And I wish I could go back and tell that version of me that your most meaningful life will flow when you simply begin showing up for your days in ways that feel aligned and alive for you. You don't need to figure out your entire life in your mind because goodness knows we live in a completely unpredictable world. And a decade from now, you will have grown and changed and become more wise, and you'll be a different person than you are today. So, can we practice letting it be enough to simply show up lovingly today and ratchet down the pressure on ourselves? I know we took a little detour from getting into nature, but that was on my heart to share today. Get your nature fix, and I am someone who likes to make up little games for myself and my family all the time. So here's a game you can play next time you're out in nature, maybe by yourself, or if you journey out with your kids. You can find something from the natural world in the landscape that catches your attention, like a leaf or a tree or a flower, and ask yourself why you like it. What qualities does it have that you're drawn to? Then, assuming that your nature item has some positive qualities, ask yourself how you could bring those same qualities forth in your own life. Part of my mission with Electric Ideas is to bring a sense of buoyancy and light and playfulness into the self-exploration space. For this reason, this fun little exercise is one of several that is captured and explained in the Tend to Your Soul toolkit. Okay, practice number 4 is to befriend your living space. I found that sometimes, especially as moms, we almost become at war with our homes. The laundry piles, the dishes. At times, everything just feels like a burden and total energetic drain. And for you listeners who have babies and toddlers, it might be a season where you practice working on surrender, because goodness knows my apartment was a hot mess during that time of my life. And now that my kids are a little bit older and self-sufficient, one soulful habit I'm working on is treating my home with a different type of energy, almost loving on it like it's a family member I'm happy to tend to or care for. I am my own worst enemy with this habit because I am someone who is deeply influenced by my surroundings, and moving through the world in a super tidy, organized way does not come easy to me. I talk to my husband about this all the time because blessedly, he is a neat and orderly person. And when our house explodes, it doesn't really seem to impact his emotional state. And I am the opposite. So I have to put quite a bit of intention and attention into my living space. And don't get me wrong, I still have the urge to complain about dirty dishes sometimes. But I've really tried to move my energy with my home more into a space where it doesn't feel like I'm battling against my home. It feels like I'm appreciating it. Doing the dishes happens to be one of my least favorite chores, but I hate being in the kitchen when there's a ton of dirty dishes. So one mindfulness practice that I try when I can feel myself becoming frustrated with the dishes is just to practice gratitude when I'm washing them, such as saying things in my head like, I'm grateful that I have access to healthy foods to feed my family. I'm grateful that I was able to share a cup of hot chocolate with my daughter, that sort of thing. And that's just one small example. This isn't about putting a bunch of pressure on yourself to have some perfect home. It's about setting up an environment where your soul can relax and breathe. Happiness expert Gretchen Rubin writes a lot about how outer order contributes to inner calm. And I do believe there is a connection between our external environment and our mental state. So when I start to notice clutter gathering in key spots like the kitchen counter, or that I have clothes on the floor, or that my cosmetics are strewn halfway across my sink, I'm not hard on myself, but I do get curious about it and see if it means that I'm rushing too much or not giving myself enough spaciousness to close tabs. I think tending to your home and befriending your living space can be a beautiful practice that stretches way beyond aesthetics. Decluttering and caring for your space can be a truly soulful habit if you just let it be about creating a space where your spirit can breathe and express. This year, I interviewed a very down-to-earth decluttering expert on the podcast, and I'm including a link to our conversation in the Tend to Your Soul toolkit because so many people love this episode and continue to tell me that some of the ideas she shared have been easy to bring to life in their own homes. So that link is ready and waiting for you, one of the many resources in the toolkit I have all ready for you. Okay, the fifth and final habit for more soulful living that I want to talk to you about today is connect with people who make you feel good. There is a writer named Brooke Romney who recently did an unofficial poll, but it was with tens of thousands of people in her community. She asked, when it comes to friendship, do you usually feel like an insider or an outsider? And the results are pretty crazy. 84% of women said they feel like outsiders. And while this poll that Brooke Romney did was just a little experiment, I think it highlights something really important. So many people are longing for deeper connection. But in reading about this experiment, one really important point that I think Brooke Romney made was that we can't expect the 16% of people who feel like insiders to carry the weight of including and inviting everyone else. She reminds us that connection is everyone's job. I'm all for creating some stillness and alone time and solitude. But one observation I've noticed from many years of work with women is that sometimes when women are being called to heal or grow or expand, they almost isolate themselves. And it can be really lonely. It's easy to take it too far and unintentionally cut ourselves off from connection. But here's the truth. We as humans are wired for connection. Connecting with others in meaningful ways might be the most soulful practice you can cultivate in your life. So don't isolate yourself, especially if you're in the winter months where everything can feel a bit heavier. It's okay to go slow and take care of yourself, but don't cut yourself off from community. If you don't already have a sense of community or people you spend time with where you really feel like yourself, then I encourage you to take a little ownership and create one for yourself. Take a class, host a book club. Instead of just hoping you're going to meet like-minded people, start showing up in spaces and places where the type of person you aspire to be is hanging out. Brené Brown talks so much about connection, and she puts it beautifully. She says, connection is why we're here. It is what gives purpose and meaning to our lives. Brené Brown reminds us that deep, meaningful relationships are an essential ingredient to life, and that it's not a luxury, it's a fundamental need. And that when we are vulnerable enough to reach out, to show up for others, to share of ourselves with others, that it brings a lot of richness to our lives. I also want to add that if you live somewhere smaller or feel isolated for any reason, or you are in a phase of motherhood where your time and resources are stretched thin, don't dismiss online communities. I have learned so much and met so many interesting people through online classes and groups over the years. Something that's crazy is that I still stay in touch with a group of female podcasters, all of whom I met during a podcasting class that we all took together several years ago. And I'm sharing that just because it's one example of a creative way that I've found community, even when as a parent, I don't always feel like I have tons of extra time on my hands. Sometimes we don't realize how disconnected we've become until we re-experience the warmth and support of true community. So this is your nudge. Plan that coffee, send the text, invite someone on a walk, take a class, or show up in an existing community that is expressing in a way that your soul is drawn to. One final note, if you are somewhere like I currently am, where it is super cold out and it gets dark at 4:30 and it feels like the biggest rally of a lifetime to get ready and leave the house at night, while I fully support taking it easy in the winter months and listening to your body, I rarely regret it when I make an effort to connect with other people. One perspective shift I invite you to try if you're feeling a lack of motivation to leave the house and talk to actual people is to think outside of yourself and let it not be about you. What if you thought of connecting with other people, not just from the perspective of how it's going to feel for you, but look at it from a perspective of how might you be able to contribute? What energy could you bring to a gathering? Could you have a chance to support a friend or make someone smile or laugh? If you're feeling antisocial, maybe think about how you could contribute to the greater good by simply showing up somewhere. All right, that is a wrap, but I want to close this episode with an opportunity for reflection. I believe that mind, body, and soul wellness are all deeply intertwined. When we uplift one, we uplift them all. But I've noticed in the deep work I do with women that the soul is often overlooked. When we make room for the soulful and the self-honoring, everything else starts to shift. I know it's not always easy to carve out time in your day for soulful practices, and that is why a small opportunity to self-reflect is lovingly built into every single Electric Ideas episode I've ever recorded. So based on this conversation today, I invite you to ask yourself this: what is one soulful practice I gravitate to right now that can help me feel deeply connected to myself? Remember that when we nurture our souls, it's not just for us. It's so we can show up more generously and be a net positive person for everybody else we encounter. I hope you enjoyed this episode and that you snag the free Tend to Your Soul toolkit today while you're thinking of it. I want you to experience how it feels to be your own ally and to truly care for yourself at the soul level. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you have an inspired day. I'm so glad you joined me today. If you're looking for more, feel free to connect with me on Instagram at @WhitneyWoman. And if you enjoyed the show, I invite you to support me by leaving a review or sharing it with a friend. Hope you have an inspired day.